Okay, well, let me know what I'm talking about.
So, yes.
It's hard to prepare if I don't know what I'm doing.
See, you're doing great right now. Because you let them know that was supposed to be the teaser, so and all that other stuff, so they can look up.
What
the
other
detail.
stuff?
But yeah, well,
About
we
the
wanted
sun.
to talk about the chemical stuff, right?
Well,
On Maui,
Ira,
that's what you were.
He's an expert that knows about chemicals in the EPA. Now he
Right.
can give his own
So,
personal opinion
right.
about how he analyzes it. Because I sent in samples with the Army. We had our own people went inside to ground zero. We snuck in. We asked for permission. Did not get it. She went in. She got random samples, different parts, because she's chemically trained. We sent it to Florida. The Army told us this. And they were scared because I don't know. They go, anything that burns, like a piece of paper, there's like minimum 10 minerals always behind. They said there's only 2. I said, what does that mean? It means they either put something in the air with the winds before or they bleached it, which confirms that people saw FEMA bleaching stuff that first week to cover up stuff. So then we sent the samples from Florida, from the Army, to DC to get more verification, like you're saying, and magically all of our samples disappeared. Luckily, our crew still has some other samples, but now we got to go on the side because, like you said, we didn't get to do the whole grid. We only got to do samples.
And it's going to be different every.
And time has changed.
Yeah, well, time changes things, the weather changes things, but every house had different chemicals in it, you know.
Propane
different,
here,
different.
commercial property here.
So, what you sample, my question is, what are you looking for? What are you trying to find? If it's a directed energy weapon, it's going to vaporize just about every friggin' thing. I mean, 9/11 was directed energy weapons. I mean, they vaporized friggin' steel.
The word on the street, they use thermite, military grade.
Thermite. But I mean, it's like, what did they use and how did they use it? You're never going to friggin' know. And as I was saying to Andrew, taking samples is like a fool's errand. It's like when Bruce tried to recall Victorino. I'm like, you're just wasting your time. Put your energy in a different way. Because taking samples, yeah, it's an emotional thing. You say, we took samples and we found this. But then it's like, where did you take the sample from? What did you get? You're spending a lot of time and effort, and I don't see that you're going to get much bang for the buck and for the time invested. So I'm not trying to knock it in a certain sense. I'm just looking at the reality of it because it's such a friggin' soup that's there. And you have so many conflicting and contaminating things that have occurred. The time, they've been there. You don't know what they did. You don't know what. So it's a fool's errand.
So even finding evidence of a cover up with a chemical analysis right now would be kind of hard to do.
What are they cover?
Like, if, for example, if they had sprayed bleach on the area, is there a way to chemically, forensically check that to see?
I don't know. I mean, I did lots of soil samples. And like I tell you, I'm just talking about the basics of spatial variability. From this sampling right here, my knee to this knee in the soil, you're going to get 2 different things. And the amount, it's just everything's localized. Yes, in general, and when I set up research plots, we treated the plots with different things. We got a 10 by 20 plot, 10 feet by 20 plot, and we had a whole bunch of them. And we have replicates. We had 3 replicates of what we were putting on there. And then we took like 7 samples, and then we take those samples and analyze each of those samples, and we take statistically what the variability within plots and within replicates and things like that. So, but even with that, you have huge variability. I mean, most people don't realize the amount of variability in the environment.
Correct.
It's an extremely, and like, oh, there's Roundup, there's glyphosate in this, and it's in my body, and it's going to kill me. All of us have DDT in our bodies because it was released for years and years when I was a kid, but it doesn't come to very high levels, and you can get this stuff out of your body, and if it's only at small levels, it doesn't do anything, because that's where you have to understand toxicity and exposure. If you're not exposed to much, there's no risk. There's very little risk. So the amount of glyphosate that's out there is really not that high. People overblow that. I don't like to get into conversations with people, oh, you're on the side of the chemical companies. No, I'm just looking at it
As a scientist.
as an objective. I'm just being objective. I'm being
So how can we,
objective.
the people, get to a point on this island where we feel actually safe, that we're not being poisoned or cross-contaminated with this stuff, and that even if the government with their studies, and hearing from our friend here that their samples magically disappeared in DC, that's, how do we get to a point where we actually know what's going on chemically?
What I would push for would be disclosure and openness, where the people need to push to say, we have not been included as part of what is going on. You're not including the people. The people need to have a seat at the table. We need to know what is occurring, how it is occurring, and how can we, as the people that lived in Lahaina, how can we be an active participant in our homes, our land. This is our land. We need to have the right to have a seat at the table. We need to know who's doing what analysis, what is the analysis being done for, what are they testing for. So I would
and who pays them?
Yeah, well, you say, okay, you're here. The government's going to come and help us. All this money's coming in. EPA is going to do this. Okay, what is EPA doing? What are they sampling for? How long is it going to take for them to come up with the analysis? How many months before we have preliminary results? What are they looking for? What are we, how are you going to share that with the people here? Because this is our land. You need to tell us. We need to be an integral part. You need to have us be able to voice our concerns, and you need to not just listen to us, you need to take what we say and you need to weave it into what you are doing. So it's been 2 months. You haven't included the people at all. Therefore, if you're not going to include us, then we are going to fight back against you. We're going to either kick you out of office or we're going to take control, because this is not how it should be, because this is our land. We have the right. And you've got the whole world watching. So I would say, instead of doing a bunch of samples, let them do the samples, but you need to be partly in charge of what is being done. Yeah. Therefore, you don't spend your money, you have them spend their money, but you put them on the spot. That's what you need to do. But you need to not just protest, but to say, we demand that you let us be part of what is going on, to solve what is going on, to know what is going on. If you're not communicating with us, and I've watched several of these hearings they have, and people get up and they have 3 minutes to talk, or 5 minutes, and that's it. And I saw one lady, her last name was Fernandez, she like mocked this guy, and she goes, yeah, I know the other thing, your DE or whatever stuff, and this, and it's like, no, they need to give the community respect, but then they also need to pick maybe 3 to 5 people who are the key spokespeople for your people. But they got to be really sharp, and they got to understand what questions to ask. You can set this up. It can be a one-page thing. It's like we set up for the Malone Doctrine. It's like boom, boom, boom. This is what we need. I would rather do something like that for you than to talk about all this stuff for like sampling and stuff, because you're not going to get anywhere. You're going to spin your wheels. You're going to waste your time. And they're still going to go along on what they're doing. You need to interject yourself into what they're doing and say, look, it's been 2 months. It's clear as day. The first several weeks or month, the government was not here. The whole world knows what occurred. They know that we had to get help from our neighboring islands, and people had to go around the roadblocks to bring stuff in. But even after that, you're not including us on the cleanup, the sampling. We need to know what's going on.
On the reopening?
It's like
tomorrow.
We need to know now. We will pick our 2 or 3 people that are our key people, our representatives that we know we can trust, that will look out for our best interest, they need to be having a seat at the table, at the proper table, and if you don't do that, then we're going to take action.
Yeah, and these guys don't even have the proper information, or they haven't given it to us. How do we know that the tourists that they're allowing into the West Side tomorrow aren't going to be poisoned themselves?
I wouldn't go there and do that.
I'm not going there.
Because
Not doing that.
they're not going to be right in that area. They're going to go to all the nice places.
We should hope so, but there's always a dum-dum that wants to go where they shouldn't.
A quick story for you, gentlemen. It's about acute toxicity. We have one family member, I can just say Tongan because he passed away. He was hired to work behind the Lahaina High School to build rock walls. Big Tongan guy, never drank, never smoked, great father, worked with the family business, 66 years old. He died, just maybe a month ago, 3 weeks into the fire. It was definitely the acute toxicity, like you mentioned earlier off camera, because after 3 weeks, his liver shut down. He's darker, bigger brown than me, started turning yellow skin. Stopped eating. To me, it's poison, toxicity. Maui couldn't help him. They flew him to Oahu. I was with the family members, and he passed away in Queens. We tried to get the autopsy. It was said it was going to be done. Then when we started digging in, oh, so sorry, autopsy is going to take a month. And then, but the Tongan family, here's the issue. The Tongan family flew from Tonga to do the ritual rites and ceremonies because the mortuaries is only 3. They're charging $10,000 on average per these cremated bodies. They are milking the dead people. They're being extorted. We did complain to the capital. We did tell the governor, Sylvia Luke, and they don't want to charge everybody. But there's a huge extortion game going on. And what we do want to focus on...
This is one of the most corrupt places I've ever seen in my life.
It is horrible, and that's why I want to
Extremely
refocus on the solutions, because the story is the people are
We
suffering.
need the solar kill shot soon. Although I like electricity.
Right. But now we want to talk about solutions, right? About being self-sufficient, you know. So now we got to get on this camera. How do we want to advice you want to give the future generations, since you're an OG, original gangsta, you already know from the future, from the other generations.
Old school.
Yeah, old school. What advice, since you come from the scientific background, you have a great analysis of objective, what advice would you like to tell the younger generations who inherit the earth?
Well, they need to get off of their the little handheld things. They need to learn. They need to connect with nature, because whether you like it or not, you're going to need to. So, and if you look back at the beginning of the United States of America, when the Constitution and our country was first formed, 95% of the population lived off the land. They were self-sufficient. So they thought differently. They, being a self-sufficient, they weren't like working on the landlord's land in Europe. Right. They weren't a serf or a servant to somebody. They had to do it themselves with their own hands, their own mind. So that you had a different type of person, where nowadays it's much less than 1% of the population farms the land or extracts minerals or timber or takes the resources that gives it to the other 99+%. And so people are detached from the environment. So the most important thing is the young generation needs to reattach with nature and reattach with where does everything come from. If you ask most kids that are in second grade, where does food come? It comes from the grocery store. You may get a higher percentage of kids on Hawaii because you're more in nature here. But if you ask people in Los Angeles or Chicago, that's 99.99% of them, that's what they're going to tell you. So, but people need to learn how to be more self-sufficient. They need to do things and learn how to think for themselves. I mean, I see the young generation, they're writing something. I mean, I've written lots of documents. Documents I write anywhere from 20 pages to 100 pages. They're large scientific documents. Now write from scratch when you're writing them. Where I see the young generation, they got this chat GPT and other stuff. Computers are nice tools. AI is a nice tool, but you need to use your brain. I know how to use a calculator. I know how to use a computer. But when I was my first year of college, we didn't have calculators. I had a slide rule. I still have my slide rule. I still know how to use my slide rule. So if there's no electronics, I know how to do mathematics with that. So, but it's just a way of thinking. I think one of the most important things that young people need to do is learn how to think and how to do things. If you had to, don't rely upon this, don't rely upon that. All the electronics, all your things that make your life easy, if those were all gone, what do you do?
Yeah, let me kind of summarize in maybe one or two sentences. The internet or the AI can give us all the answers in the world, but only by developing our brains do we learn how to ask the right questions.
Yeah, and you learn how, I mean, it's not just going to school to get a degree in this or a degree in that. It should be, how can I learn to learn for the rest of your life? Because, yes, I have a degree in this and I have a degree in that, but then like my soil chemistry degree, I didn't use that because nobody was hiring somebody for that, and I needed to eat, so I needed to get a job. But then I ended up working on hazardous substances, and within a year I went from just being with the company to being in charge of that, because I just took the initiative to be in charge of it.
Kept learning.
And kept learning. So, and then I knew everything about hazardous substances. Yeah, I'm a scientist, I'm a chemist, biologist, geologist, but you apply that way of thinking to something else. So you constantly change.
Now you're growing your own garden, building your off-grid,
I've always been
like water catchment.
I've always been a gardener.
Right, okay.
Love gardening. It's connection with the earth. And I think that's a good thing to be, you need what they say, grounded. It's good to stick your feet on the ground. People can do that here in Hawaii. We can get exposure to the sun. The sun can burn you, give you sunburn, give you cancer. But what they don't teach people is you really need a certain amount of sun. I mean, we have a cold and flu season every year. It's really not a cold and flu season. It's a vitamin D deficiency season. People are not getting enough vitamin D. If they supplemented with a lot of vitamin D, we wouldn't see that as many people getting the flu and having all these colds and stuff. It's just common sense. They don't teach common sense anymore with just nutrition. If you eat better and you don't eat junk, your body's going to be stronger. I mean, my wife and I got sick here for like weeks, back the end of August, beginning of September. That we hadn't been sick like that. We got some kind of bug. It wasn't COVID, but we hadn't been sick in 30 years because we eat right. We take all kinds of natural things, which I grow myself, you know. So
if you need a chemistry degree to read the ingredients, then maybe we shouldn't be eating it.
Yeah, we don't need a lot of junk food. I mean, people need to take care and make their bodies strong and their minds strong and learn to learn. So.
I think that's a good stopping point. Learn how to learn.
Well, question since we're still on a good roll.
Okay.
Because people know it's a hot topic. You just mentioned about the novas, the polar shifts of the axis. How can we rebuild Lahaina? My idea of making earth homes like the Hobbit to protect, because galvanized steel and pohaku, which is stone, survived the VEW weapon.
Yeah, I mean, that's all well and good, but to understand when the micronova occurs, it will put so much energy into our planet, it unlocks the low velocity zone, which is essentially between the crust and the mantle of the Earth, and it's like a thin layer of glue. When I say thin, it's still, you know, quite large area, but when you look at the whole Earth, it's rather thin, and it unlocks right there. And when it does, actually, when they teach you in school, they teach kids, oh, here's the crust, here's the mantle, and here's the core of the planet, and it's all homogeneous. Well, it really is not. It's heterogeneous. So there's actually, within the Earth, there's a structure in the Earth. And actually, every 12,000 years when the world turns over, it goes back to the same place 12,000 years later. Back in the late 1940s, when we were worried about Russia coming across, and we had, potential the Cold War with Russia, we sent Major White up there. He took samples down into the permafrost in northern Canada, and he found something. We were trying to say how we could navigate over the North Pole, because as you get up there, the navigation doesn't work really well. But when he went down and they took the samples, what they found was they found 7 layers, and the layers were Arctic tundra, tropical paradise, Arctic tundra, tropical paradise, Arctic tundra, tropical paradise, and they said, what the hell is this? And then they took radio labeling, carbon-14, beryllium-10, aluminum-26, krypton 81. You look at those isotopes, it can tell you the decay rate. So you can put a time stamp on each of these. And what they said is every 12,000 years, it flips. So that area becomes tropical, and then it becomes tundra, and then it becomes tropical. When I said the axis points in the center of the Earth, the 2 axis points are Egypt and the Hawaiian Islands, and it rotates like that. And what will happen is Greenland and Antarctica.
The magnetic access points.
Yeah.
Right.
And as it flips, Greenland and Antarctica will be closer to the pole, closer to the equator, and Brazil and Indonesia will be the new poles, and it'll be really cold there. But there'll be waves that happen as the flip occurs, and it'll occur in one day.
One day, not over.
One day.
1 day shift.
1 day shift. The Atlantic Ocean will race over the Appalachian Mountains. The Gulf of Mexico will come up the center of the United States. There will be certain safe zones where you can live. The eastern ridge of the Rocky Mountains will be a fairly safe zone. Colorado. Hawaii may be fairly safe, because as being one of the axis points, the waves are larger farther away from the axis point that you get.
Correct.
Being the axis point, the water's spinning around us, but even when it's spinning around us, you still might be able to see 50 or 100 or 200 foot changes in water. So if you're down in Lahaina or anywhere, Kihei or any of those places, they're toast. So as you were starting the conversation before we started this, I wouldn't want to rebuild anything there right now, because when the micronova occurs 20 years from now, it's going to get wiped out. We're not going to have the huge waves, but we're still going to have waves. And the waves are not going to come like, they're not going to come like you see in a Hollywood movie, like this huge wave that's 1,000 feet high. No, they build. It'll be like a foot per minute. So in an hour, you've gone up 60 feet. Well, if that happened on Maui, the whole center of the island's already flooded. But then it's going to continue, and that will continue for 18 to 24 hours. How high it will come up, I don't know. I don't think we're going to get as high here because we are an access point. But we also have to worry about several other things from the micronova. The arc discharge will hit the western Pacific. That can raise up the water 1,000 feet, and then we have a huge wave from that. And you can also have impactors when the sun blasts off its shell. But that's in 2020. Before that, we'll have the solar kill shot.
In 20 when, sorry?
I mean, that'll be about 20 years from now. 18 to 20 years. You don't know exactly when it'll occur, because as we don't have a record. We have a record that it occurs every 12,000 years. We know what's causing it, the electromagnetic current sheet from the center of the Milky Way galaxy, which is a wave that hits us. But unfortunately, the people that were around 12,000 years ago didn't give us, blow by blow exactly how it occurs. So we have a time window between the late 2030s to the mid 2040s when that will occur. But before that occurs, we'll have the solar kill shot, and we'll be back to something between the Stone Age and the Bronze Age. We won't have waves and stuff. And I can go into and watch the videos that I'll attach for you on what occurs during the solar micronova. And the one day of it has many things occurring with like a 36-hour time frame. And even after that, then all the volcanoes around the world are going to be going off also. You don't have to worry as much about the volcanoes here because they're not silica-based volcanoes. The silica-based volcanoes are like Mount St. Helens, Mount Tambora. Um, those those build up a lot of pressure and they let off. Yellowstone is also like that, but Yellowstone won't. Yellowstone is what they call one of the mega volcanoes, but it's broken. It constantly releases tension all the time, so it doesn't build up a lot of pressure. The Hawaiian Islands are not silica based, so they tend to ooze. They're what they call effusive. So yeah, you might get them blowing up a couple hundred, 300, 400 feet in the air with lava, but that's not like the ones that go and shoot ejecta into the stratosphere up at 70,000 feet above us. That a lot of those will be going off, and then we'll have like a nuclear winter. It's not really nuclear, but
Same
it'll
effect.
cloud out everything, and then it'll rain. After the micronova, it'll rain for like a week or more. Rains like you've never seen before.
It feels like the Bible, like Moses. If this
Yeah.
happened 12,000 years
All
ago,
of this information is not just in the Bible. Every great civilization down through time is saying the same thing. And Ben Davison covers this. The science is telling you what's going to occur, but it's written in all the ancient texts of all the ancient peoples around the world, not just the Bible, the Quran, all the
The Sumerian tablets.
Indians. They all talk about the Indian culture did a good job of really putting this stuff into text.
Mahabharata, whatever they.
Yeah.
The,
But
whatever.
but they all are telling you what occurs, and they all say it in a similar way. So
Fascinating. You have so many questions. Just to let you know.
yeah, but as far as rebuilding in Lahaina right away, I would say don't worry about it, because yeah, you could rebuild, but this is going to occur, and that's right down by the ocean. Anything by the ocean when the micronova hits is toast. You don't want to be on the coastline of anywhere. I may be safe up here. I live in Makawao at 1,500 feet. That may be a safe place to be, but I need to be underground for about a week when the micronova and all the rains occur, and then you can come back out and rebuild the world. I'm not so much worried about that. I'm in my late 60s now. I'm in great health, in great shape. I may live to be 100, and I may be around for the micronova. I may not be. I'm more concerned about the solar kill shot that could occur next week or within 10 years from now. I say 10 to 12 years max before that occurs. But I'd say it's more like somewhere between 7 to 12 years when we're going to, the higher probability than when it'll occur. I want to prepare for that so I'm self-sufficient and I can survive and build a community where we can survive. After that, it's going to be in the hands of you younger people that are going to have to deal with it.